On a quiet street in a small town, there stood an old house. It was a large Victorian house with a wraparound porch and a turret. The house was empty for as long as anyone could remember, but it was said to be haunted. The rumors about the house had been circulating for years. Some people said that they had seen lights flickering in the windows at night. Others said that they had heard strange noises coming from the house. There was even a story about a woman who had been murdered in the house many years ago. Despite the rumors, a young couple named Sarah and Michael decided to buy the house. They had heard the stories, but they didn't believe them. They thought the house would be a perfect place to start their new life together. Sarah and Michael moved into the house on a sunny day. They were excited about their new home, and they didn't notice anything strange at first. However, as the days went by, they started to experience strange things. Sarah would often hear whispering voices in the empty rooms. The whispers were soft and indistinct, but she could tell that they were talking about her. Sometimes she would hear her name being called. Other times, she would hear strange phrases like, "Get out," or "We're coming for you." Michael would see shadows moving in the corners of his eyes. When he turned to look, the shadows would disappear. One night, he woke up in the middle of the night to find a dark figure standing at the foot of his bed. The figure stared at him for a long time, and then it vanished into thin air. Sarah and Michael were terrified. They didn't know what to do. They tried to ignore the strange occurrences, but it was getting harder and harder. One day, Sarah was in the attic when she heard a loud crash. She ran downstairs and found Michael in the living room. He was pale and shaking. "What happened?" Sarah asked. "I saw something," Michael said. "It was in the hallway. It was tall and dark, and it had glowing red eyes." Sarah and Michael knew that they couldn't stay in the house any longer. They packed up their belongings and fled that night. They never looked back. The house on the quiet street is still empty. It stands as a silent reminder of the evil that dwells within. Years later, Sarah and Michael were driving through the small town where they had once lived. They saw the old house in the distance, and they couldn't help but stop. They got out of the car and walked up to the house. It was even more dilapidated than they remembered. The windows were boarded up, and the paint was peeling. Sarah and Michael stood in front of the house for a long time. They could feel the evil presence emanating from it. "We should go," Sarah said. Michael nodded in agreement. They turned and walked back to their car. As they drove away, Sarah looked in the rearview mirror. She saw the old house in the distance. It was getting smaller and smaller, but she could still feel its evil presence. Sarah knew that she would never forget the whispering house.